Today in this video we'll talk about another gram-positive rod bacteria, that is Clostridia. So the Clostridia is the gram-positive spore-forming obligate anaerobic rods. So specifically in the Clostridia there are four organisms that you should know in detail, that are Clostridium Titanium, Clostridium Botulinum, Clostridium perfringens, and Clostridia difficile. And the Clostridium titani produces tetanus toxin, whereas the Clostridium botulinum produces botulinum toxin. And these are two important toxins that are going to discuss in this video also. So the tetanus toxin and the botulinum toxin both are proteases, and they cleave the snare proteins that are involved in the neurotransmitter. The snare means the soluble NSF attachment protein receptor. So it cleaves the snare protein that is involved in the neurotransmitter. First of all, let us discuss about the Clostridium titani. The Clostridium titani produces the titanospasmin. The titanospasmin is the exotoxin. It causes the disease tetanus. So let us discuss about the mechanism how the titanospasmin causes the tetanus. The titanospasmin blocks the release of the GABA and the glycine from the Rensa cell in the spinal cord, and it predisposes to the tetanus. What are the various clinical features of the tetanus then? Various clinical features of the tetanus are spastic paralysis, trismus, rhesus, sardonicus, and opisthotonus. The trismus, you can see in this also video, is that after the person having this trismus due to the tetanus, it occurs in the lockjaw. That means the person cannot open their mouth properly due to the trismus, due to the spasm of the muscles that is present for the opening of the jaw, and it renders the lockjaw. And the research sardonicus is that what happens in the research sarcoidosis is that the person appear as the raised eyebrow with open grin. You can also see in this figure also. And in the opisthotonus position, you can see in this figure, it occurs due to the spasm of the spinal extension. So the person appear the bow-like structures due to the spasm of the spinal muscles. That means spinal extensors muscles are spinal extensor muscles go into spasm, and the person appears the bow-like structure that you are seeing in these pictures also. So how we prevent the tetanus then? We prevent the tetanus by the tetanus vaccine. Simply, the extended program of immunization in Nepal provides the tetanus vaccine to the mother who are pregnant. And whenever we encounter any wound that occurs from the rusty materials, or if we suspect that the material contain Clostridium titani, then we immediately give that person the booster dose. So how do we treat the patient with tetanus? So we treat with the antitoxin, and we give the vaccine booster. We give the various antibiotics to kill the Clostridium titani, and we give diazepam to relax the muscle, and we should always do the wound debridement, because the wound is the source of the Clostridium titani. Now let us discuss about the Clostridium Botulinum. The Clostridium Botulinum produces heat labile toxin. The heat labile toxin inhibits the acetylcholine release at the neuromuscular junction, and it causes the botulism. How it occurs is that in adults it occurs due to ingestion of the preformed toxin, whereas in the baby there is ingestion of the spore. The ingestion of the spore can occur after the ingestion of the honey that has the spore of the Clostridium Botulinum. So in Nepal, what happens that when the baby is 6 months old, there is cultural type of there is the culture of giving the various food to the baby. So sometimes we give honey also. So while giving honey, if there is any ingestion of the spore, then there can occur the botulism. After the baby ingests those spore, the botulism can occur, and it can result in the floppy baby syndrome. The floppy baby syndrome, you can also see in this picture that how the baby is floppy while holding. There is no tone in the various muscles of the body in this child. So how we treat it? We give the human botulinum immunoglobulin. What are the various symptoms of the botulism? The various symptoms of the botulism are diplopia, dysarthria, dysphagia, and dyspnea. We see the descending paralysis. We see the descending paralysis in the Clostridium botulinum, and the Clostridium botulinum, we can also extract the Botox from it. In the Botox, there are various uses of Botox. The Botox can be used for the focal dystonia. It can be used in the hyperhidrosis, and it can also be used on the muscle spasm, also on the cosmetic reduction of the facial wrinkles. So these are the various one of the medical purposes of the Botox that we extract from the Clostridium botulinum. The Botox is the botulinum toxin A of the Clostridium botulinum. Now let us discuss about the Clostridium perfringens and Clostridium difficile. Talking about the Clostridium perfringens. The Clostridium perfringens produces the alpha toxin. The alpha toxin is the lecithinase and the phospholipase. So what happens is that the alpha toxin causes the myonecrosis and the hemolysis. The myonecrosis, you can see in this figure, is that after the toxin causes myonecrosis, it creates a gas gangrene, and it presents as the soft tissue crepitus. Also you can see this in this picture. Those are the myonecrosis, gas gangrenous portion of the wound that the person had after the infection with the Clostridium perfringens. What happens is that when the spore is present in the contaminated food, and the food is kept in the less than 60 degrees Celsius, then the spore germinate, and it will ultimately germinate to the vegetative bacteria, and it produces the heat labile toxin, that is the enterotoxin, and it also causes the food poisoning symptoms. So after the ingestion of the spores of the Clostridium perfringens, the food poisoning symptom occurs within 10 to 12 hours, but usually it is mild, and after taking the oral rehydration solution or doing the conservative management, there could be the resolution within the 24 hours. But the myonecrosis and the hemolysis is the more severe condition of the Clostridium perfringens. Now let us discuss about the Clostridium difficile. In the Clostridium difficile, you have to know that this Clostridium difficile produces two types of toxin. One is toxin A and toxin B, which damage the enterocytes. So it causes the watery diarrhea, which ultimately causes the pseudomembranous colitis. The pseudomembranous colitis can be seen by the colonoscopy after the infection with the Clostridium difficile. So the pseudomembranous colitis can also occur secondary to antibiotic use. The clindamycin and ampicillin are the important antibiotics that causes pseudomembranous colitis, and also the pseudomembranous colitis is associated with the proton pump inhibitor. The infection with the Clostridium difficile is diagnosed by the PCR or antigen detection of one or both toxin in the stool, and one of the major complications of the pseudomembranous colitis is toxic megacolon. The treatment of the pseudomembranous colitis, you can give the oral vancomycin or the metronidazole or fidaxomicin. So these are the three antibacterial drugs that can kill the Clostridium difficile and prevents the pseudomembranous colitis, which ultimately will prevent the toxic megacolon. So I hope you understood this topic on the Clostridia. Today we discussed major about the Clostridium Titanium, Clostridium Botulinum, Clostridium perfringens, and Clostridium difficile. You have to know that in the Clostridium Titanium, it produces the Spasming, which will ultimately causes the tetanus. And the Clostridium Botulinum will causes the botulism, and which also causes the floppy baby syndrome. And the Clostridium perfringens produces the alpha toxin, which causes the myonecrosis and the hemolysis. The myonecrosis causes the gas gangrene, and the Clostridium difficile the toxin A and toxin B, which will produce the pseudomembranous colitis. And the ultimate complication of the pseudomembranous colitis is toxic megacolon. So this you have to know very well. I hope you understood this topic on the Clostridium. Thank you.